Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Monday, the 19th of January. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. Authorities say images of Islamic State flags have been found on the computer of a missing Korean teenager who may have joined the extremist group in Syria. 4 government ministries and institutions in charge of diplomacy and security lay out their blueprint for 2015, focusing on practical ways to prepare for reunification. Plus, the U.S. Secret Service says shots were fired outside Vice President Joe Biden's house in Delaware. Biden and his wife were not home at the time. We begin with growing concerns. A young Korean man reported missing in Turkey more than a week ago may have joined Islamic State in Syria. Authorities in Korea say they have found pictures of Islamic State-related material on the man's computer. Nothing has been confirmed yet, though, as Korea and Turkey step up efforts to try and work out where he went. Son Jong-in reports.
Seoul's foreign ministry says the 18-year-old man surnamed Kim was last seen on January 10th after leaving a hotel in Kilis, a town that straddles the Turkey-Syria border. His disappearance came to light 2 days later when Kim's travel companion, a Korean national in his 40s, reported him missing to the Korean embassy in Ankara. A Turkish daily newspaper reported on Saturday that Kim had crossed the border into Syria to join the Islamic State militant group after exchanging emails with one of its members. Authorities in Seoul initially cast doubt on the allegations, saying they had found no substantive evidence he was in contact with IS. However, new clues have come to light. Police in Korea say they found some photos on the teenager's computer showing IS members holding rifles and the group's distinctive black flag. And an employee of the hotel where Kim was staying in Kilis reportedly said he was wearing an Islamic-style headscarf and was carrying a full backpack as he left the hotel. The hotel employee said he thought Kim might have been planning on going to Syria, explaining that the area is a common route that foreign fighters take to join the terror group. Authorities in Korea and Turkey are working in close coordination to try and locate the teenager. If confirmed, it would mark the first known case of a Korean national joining Islamic State. Son Jong-in, ARIRANG News.
The South Korean ministries in charge of foreign affairs, defense and unification have presented their blueprint for this year. Top of their agenda is preparing for the reunification of the two Koreas. Our Hwang Sang-hee reports.
South Korea is rolling up its sleeves to reunify the Korean peninsula. 4 government ministries and institutions in charge of diplomacy and security presented a blueprint for 2015 on Monday, focusing on practical reunification preparations. Led by the Unification Ministry, the plan includes securing peace and stability on the peninsula by stepping up national security against any North Korean threats. South Korea will also bolster strategic cooperation with countries like the United States and China to denuclearize Pyongyang. Building a platform for national consent on reunification is another key project. 92% of South Koreans were born after the peninsula was divided in 2. Seoul is planning various joint cultural events with Pyongyang and more classes on reunification at schools to narrow the gap between South and North Koreans. South Korea is seeking to hold government-level talks with North Korea this year to reach fundamental solutions for humanitarian issues like war-separated families. Hundreds of thousands of families remain torn apart for more than 6 decades after being separated by the Korean War. Seoul also plans to propose jointly celebrating the 70th anniversary of independence from Japanese rule. South Korea will actively seek the support of the international community by explaining that a reunified Korea will be beneficial. It will speed up regional economic projects like the Eurasia Initiative, an ambitious vision to build a new economic bloc involving landlocked nations in Eurasia, Korea, China, and Japan. And along with these plans, the government says it will work to make North Korea a key partner in its efforts for reunification. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
Now, North Korea says South Korea needs to lift sanctions as a precondition to holding reunions for families separated by the Korean War. According to its propaganda website, the North said Seoul is raising tensions by holding military drills with the United States and by not stopping activists flying anti-Pyongyang leaflets across the border. The website says the ball is in South Korea's court, and when it provides the environment and conditions, the issue of family reunions will be solved and inter-Korean relations will improve. Now, the recently released film The Interview is the movie North Korea really doesn't want you to see. Pyongyang seems to be so desperate that North Korean diplomats in Myanmar have been prodding the local authorities there to crack down on vendors selling bootleg DVDs of the movie. Connie Lee has more.
The comedy The Interview is attracting attention once again, this time for its popularity in Myanmar. The movie, about a fictional plot to kill a North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, has caused quite the stir, with Pyongyang calling the movie an act of war and the communist state accused of hacking Sony Pictures in retaliation. But now it looks like Pyongyang is trying to stop sales of pirated copies of the movie on the streets of Myanmar. The New York Times has reported that in recent days, the police, sometimes accompanied by North Korean officials, have been visiting DVD shops in Yangon, Myanmar's biggest city, to rid the shops of bootleg copies of the film. According to street vendors and shop owners, as copies of the movie began selling out, with some saying that more than 100 DVDs were sold in a day, the police started a citywide crackdown on sales of the movie and threatened anyone selling it. Now, copies of the movie, which were selling for about $1 for 3, have disappeared from the shelves of large DVD shops and roadside vendors. The report also quotes one DVD seller who says a police officer told her the North Korean embassy in Myanmar had provided a list of shops selling the film. However, Myanmar's information minister and a presidential spokesperson says the crackdown is not targeting a specific movie, but only targeting pirated DVDs. The Interview was released online and in a limited number of theaters in the U.S. at the end of last year. But aside from the bootleg copies, it has not yet officially been released on DVD. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
Now, we are following up on reports that shots were fired outside the Delaware home of U.S. Vice President Joe Biden over the weekend. For more on this, we join Eunice Kim at the News Center. Eunice, we understand that there was no immediate signs of any damage, and Biden and his wife weren't actually even home at the time anyway.
Yeah, that's a good thing, Mark. Good morning. They weren't home, but they were in Delaware, where that residence is located. The Secret Service said multiple gunshots were fired around 8:30 Saturday evening local time on a public road several hundred meters from the secured perimeter of the Delaware home. Now, police are investigating whether anything was actually hit. Now, soon after hearing those shots, Secret Service personnel did see a vehicle drive away at, quote, a high rate of speed. Police arrested one person about half an hour later when he tried to pass an officer securing the area, but it is still not yet known whether that individual is actually tied to the shooting.
Well, details are sure to emerge over the coming hours and days, of course. Now, let's move over to the Philippines now, where Pope Francis is preparing to return to the Vatican, wrapping up what has been a very successful 5-day visit to the only Catholic-majority Asian country. And I understand there was also a milestone marked on the Pope's last full day, at least in the Philippines.
That's right. There was actually a typhoon making its way through the Philippines this weekend, concurrent to the Pope's visit, raising some concerns. But apparently that was not enough to keep millions of people very enthusiastic and excited to see the pontiff to actually come out and attend an open-air mass in the capital of Manila. Sunday's mass at Rizal Park was attended by an unprecedented 6 to 7 million billion people. This according to the Vatican, which cited local estimates. That is a new record for a papal event since Pope John Paul II drew 5 million people in Manila 20 years ago. A part of the service was dedicated to the victims of Typhoon Haiyan.
And actually, Eunice, visiting regions affected by Typhoon Haiyan was on the Pope's agenda, but it seems very rough weather cut his schedule short.
Right. It was a priority for Pope Francis to visit Tacloban and the survivors of that typhoon that, of course, had killed more than 6,000 people. And the powerful rain and winds did cut his stay short there, but it did not keep the pontiff from holding Mass at Tacloban Airport.
When I saw from Rome the catastrophe, I felt that I had to be here. I'm here to be with you. Perhaps a little late, I have to say, but I'm here.
Now, the 78-year-old pontiff prayed for the dead and comforted the survivors of the typhoon that had wiped away nearly all of Tacloban City in 2013, noting the heroic strength, faith, and resilience shown by the country. Pope Francis himself was seen moved, as you saw there, at a separate youth event ahead of the outdoor mass on Sunday. A 12-year-old girl, a rescued street child, had tearfully asked why God allows innocent children to be abandoned to suffering and why so little help is being done to help. Hugging the child, the Pope responded, "Only when we are able to cry with those in the margins are we able to come close to responding to your question." Now, in addition to helping the poor, Pope Francis called also for propping up the family and protecting the environment during his visit, Mark.
Yes, similar scenes to when he came and visited Korea last August with the sheer number of people and, of course, meeting with the kids there. Well, thank you very much, Eunice, and we'll see you back again at noon.
See you then.
Said that a team of South Korea.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers 15 billion. The Korean government has unveiled a very ambitious plan to attract tens of billions of dollars in investors' funds to make the country's tourism industry take it to the next level. The plan includes the construction of 2 new $930 million mega resorts. These are going to contain things like casinos and other luxury facilities. Ji Myung-gil reports.
The plan calls for the prompt spending of nearly $16 billion previously earmarked for the development of 4 mega projects and aims to attract more than $7 billion in new investments for the construction of hotels, resorts, and theme parks for a total of $23 billion. The plan was formulated by the Ministries of Finance, Tourism, and Land and other government agencies. One of the 4 mega projects would develop the land in the U.S. Army's Yongsan Garrison in central Seoul. The other projects would develop land once used as the headquarters of Korea Electric Power Corporation, build auxiliary facilities for cogeneration plants in new towns, and expand OLED display assembly lines. To boost the country's tourism industry, the government will build 2 resorts with new investment targets of nearly $930 million each. The resorts will have hotels, conference halls, fine dining, shopping malls, leisure and sports facilities, medical facilities, and casinos, which will only be open to foreign tourists. The government says it will also aim to attract funds to expand the number of hotels nationwide to cope with the increasing number of foreign tourists every year.
We expect some $1 billion to be available to construct 5,000 hotel rooms by 2017.
The government also plans to authorize the opening of 4 new duty-free shops, 3 in Seoul and 1 on Jeju Island. In addition, the government hopes to designate 6 new high-tech centers in urban areas and will provide more than $18 billion this year in the form of loans to innovative tech companies. Ji Myung-gil, ARIRANG News.
Korea's producer prices dipped for the 5th straight month in December. falling to the lowest point in 4 years. The Bank of Korea says producer prices went down 0.9% last month from a month earlier. From the previous year, the index also marked a more significant 2% decline. The central bank attributed the slide to falling global oil prices that dragged down prices of petroleum goods by more than 10% in December from just a month before that. The data follows the central bank's cut in its inflation outlook for this year to 1.9%. That happened last week. Now, Korean consumers have long been very loyal to Korean-made products, but the tide is turning somewhat, with a new report saying Koreans now look at quality and price over where the product is from. This is according to the British weekly Economist, which says Koreans are now turning to non-Korea-based websites for their shopping, as they know they can save quite a lot of money. The weekly says there was a time when Korean celebrities swapped their BMWs for Hyundais to show how much they wanted to support the Korean economy, but they say those trends have really run their course now. It cites 2009 as the point when the patriotic consumerism first started to lose its edge, when Apple launched its iPhone in Korea and seized a quarter of smartphone sales in just its first year in the country. The Economist also pointed to Korea's free trade agreements for this changing trend, saying that Koreans have more choice now than they ever have before. The ecosystem for startups in Korea is starting to blossom, so much so that some believe Seoul is on the cusp of becoming Asia's Silicon Valley in the coming years. The government has also been throwing its full support behind nurturing these startups, dishing out tens of billions of dollars in grants and other subsidies to small and mid-sized businesses, including startups. For the first in our 5-part series on startups in Korea, here's our Kwon So-ah.
Over the past 35 years, only 3 startups have made it to the top 100 companies in terms of market capitalization in Korea. The fact highlights that conglomerates still dominate the Korean economy. But there are signs the corporate landscape is changing. The number of startups in Korea has been breaking records in recent years, reaching nearly 30,000 last year. That's more than triple the number seen during the dot-com bubble from the late 1990s to the early 2000s. The number of serious investors has grown too. Almost $1.3 billion was poured into startups last year, marking a 27% rise from 3 years ago. The startup ecosystem has also strengthened with a rise in angel investors, accelerators, and networks. Startup Alliance, a joint effort between the government and private sector, for example, arranges special events to connect startups with potential partners and clients.
Compared to Canada, where I'm from, Korean government, a lot of Korean institutions providing a really good environment to the people who are preparing to start a business. For example, this kind of a meeting and providing really good information, and there are a lot of seminars.
Experts say the new startup wave is different from the previous boom, when e-commerce was still a fledgling business and internet connections were clunky. Now, net access is instant and easy, and more importantly, mobile.
A lot of small startups, they're trying to connect some kind of services to the smartphone and more efficiently than existing offline businesses. So there will be a lot of new innovations on that front.
President Park Geun-hye wants startups to lead her administration's drive to transform Korea into a creative economy. She has vowed to cut through red tape and provide financial incentives to them. In line with this, the government has earmarked $92 billion this year to support small and mid-sized businesses, including startups. Getting off the ground is one thing, but turning startups into profitable businesses is another. Korea's #1 web portal Naver, one of the most successful startups that survived the dot-com crash, is also providing practical help. It's opening a startup accelerator this year in Seoul's version of Silicon Valley, the Tehran Valley. That area will also house a government-led tech startup campus and the third Google campus in the world.
The success of startups is key to realizing the government's creative economy plan, which in turn is key to getting the economy back on its feet. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
Now, Koreans have an unquenchable thirst for bottled water. There are trendy water bars stocked with dozens of varieties, from sparkling to glacial. And they're also staffed with specially trained waiters to help you make your choice. But this kind of trend hasn't always been around. Korea's bottled water market has expanded rapidly in recent years, as our Park Ji-won reports in this week's Industry Insight.
Korea's bottled water market is estimated to hit about $5.5 million in 2014. The market has almost quadrupled over the past 15 years, and last year alone it grew by some 10%. Currently, there are around 100 domestic brands of bottled water in Korea. But the hands-down top seller is Jeju Samdasu, the #1 brand for 16 years running. Let's take a look. Jeju Samdasu has been the invincible market leader since it was launched in the late 1990s. Produced and bottled by the Jeju Special Self-Governing Province Development Corporation, Jeju Samdasu racked up some $206 million in sales revenue last year, a market share of over 35%.
The reason for the continued support from Korean consumers is the unparalleled water quality. Jeju Island has one of the highest levels of precipitation in Korea. The rainfall permeates underground, forming vast groundwater resources. Jeju Island's volcanic rocks function as a natural filter, resulting in clean and naturally mineral-enriched water.
With Jeju Samdasu firmly in the lead, the competition for the #2 spot has been fierce. As of the end of 2014, Baeksansu, a brand launched in 2012 by food and beverage conglomerate Nongsim, has taken the highly coveted second position with a 5.4% market share. While Korea's bottled water market grew about 10% last year, Baeksansu's revenue expanded over 30% from the previous year.
There are three conditions for good water resources: excellent water quality, a clean environment, and abundance of water. Baekdusan Mountain meets all three conditions, and that's why Baeksansu is bottled there.
With the growing interest in health and well-being in the nation, sales of bottled water have outpaced the sales of juice, which tends to contain sugar and artificial colors, for the first time. Now that water is one of the most popular beverages, consumers are developing a water palate and a flair for water and food pairings. And premium water bars like this, which sells over 100 bottled water brands, are gaining a foothold. At the bar, water sommeliers offer their advice about which types of water will best suit consumers' needs.
There are many types of bottled water, from glacial water to deep sea water to spring water. The taste depends on the mineral content and the water's pH. And now that drinking bottled water is now considered as a part of a health and beauty regimen, the market's growth is expected to accelerate in coming years.
Another fast-growing segment is sparkling water. While still in its infant stage, the fizzy drink has quadrupled its market share in just 5 years, and it's estimated to have reached some $32 million last year. And being that it accounted for about 70% of all imported bottled water in Korea, it's estimated to grow at an even faster rate than the still water market. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Well, just when we thought spring is approaching, the upper provinces are covered with snow again. And for those of you who were out on the roads earlier, hope you made it okay. Though the snow should rapidly melt out owing to the mild and sunny conditions that we'll have today. But despite the sunny skies, staying outdoor for a long period is not really recommended as the air quality shouldn't be all that good. The level of fine dust particles are relatively higher than usual, including here in Seoul, so please bear that in mind. And here are the readings for today. Now, the daytime high in Seoul will peak at 4, while Daegu and Gwangju top out at 7, and Busan should top out at 10 later on. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island will be peaking to 9, while Daejeon and Dokdo will rise to 4 and 5 respectively. That's all for now. Back to you, Mark, in the studio.
Thank you very much, Jiyeon, for the weather, and that's all we have for now. Plenty more stories are online, and we'll be back at noon Korea time with our next newscast. Until then, goodbye.